There is major breaking news tonight out of Mar-a-Lago. President-elect Trump is expected to speak tonight, part of a planned event called the America First Experience and Gala. Big party there at Mar-a-Lago. Earlier today, the president-elect nominated Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to serve as Health and Human Services Secretary. If Matt Gaetz yesterday was a shock to the D.C. establishment as the Attorney General pick, then this pick of RFK Jr. could be a traumatic experience. There may be people in D.C. right now seeking therapy. Even Trump's transition co-chair didn't see it coming.
You're saying he would not be in charge of HHS?
No, of course not.
Okay, so he's not going to be like an acting...
He's not going to be the secretary, no.
Rule number one with Donald Trump, it's the Trump show and never say never. With that, we welcome you to the Ferris Network on television. And first tonight, something is becoming clear as we look at Mar-a-Lago, the winter White House. Donald Trump does not care anymore. In his first term, he cared what the New York Times wrote. He doesn't care anymore. In his first term, he cared about what pundits said on Meet the Press Sunday morning. He doesn't anymore. In Donald Trump's first term, he cared about being accepted and operating sort of within the norms of Washington in terms of who he picked for his chief of staff and his cabinet, on and on. He does not care anymore. Clearly, Washington learned absolutely nothing from the first Trump presidency. The president-elect is playing the D.C. establishment from 990 miles away at Mar-a-Lago. He is playing D.C., both the Republicans and the Democrats, like a violin. Establishment Washington loves establishment Washington. Establishment Washington serves establishment Washington. If Matt Gaetz wasn't enough of a statement to establishment Washington, RFK Jr.'s nomination caused a nuclear-grade meltdown among the Washington establishment.
My texts are flying off the chain, both Democrats and Republicans saying, this can't be real. Someone must have gotten this wrong. This can't be possible.
Significant concerns, horror even. Somebody said to me today, I can't think of any single individual who'd be more damaging to public health.
Well, America, I hope you like measles.
We all feel a little bit, I don't know if flummoxed is the right word, sort of rocked by the increasing incredulity of these choices.
They're going to run out of adjectives at some point. Because just 24 hours ago, it was the exact same thing. It was the end of democracy 36.0 when Trump tapped Matt Gaetz for Attorney General.
Let me begin the show by uttering some words that I never contemplated using together before, and those words are U.S. Attorney General Matt Gaetz.
He is singularly a disruptor. He is someone who's been selected because of his interest and desire to go into the organization and tear things apart.
Trump is going to bring in somebody to burn down the DOJ from the inside, and Matt is going to do that.
I always thought Matt Gaetz was in the clown car, so I'm surprised he'd be part of the starting lineup.
Tear things apart. Burn down the DOJ from the inside. That is exactly what Donald Trump promised he would do for the past 4 years. He was elected to do just that. Trump loves nothing more than watching the media freak out over his every move. And the freak out only helps Trump with his supporters. Our good friend George Will likes to point out Washington, where I sit, is 68 square miles surrounded by reality. Yet nobody living in Washington seems to understand that. The more chaos, the more Trump gets done, because there's only so much time and so many adjectives in the day for cable news outrage. Donald Trump floods the zone. Arguably, the biggest lesson the establishment hasn't learned is this: nothing kills Trump. Not the indictments, not saying John McCain isn't a war hero, not the overturning of Roe v. Wade, not saying he's going to build a wall, not appointing Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, not appointing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as his HHS secretary, or Matt Gaetz as his attorney general. Trump earned the nickname Teflon Don for a reason. Trump wants to torch the entire D.C. establishment. Left, right, center, and especially the media. RFK is ready and willing to help to tear down the bureaucracy, as is Matt Gaetz, as is Pete Hegseth. So while the rest of the political world is totally aghast, we are not. It's not our job to be aghast or to celebrate. Our job is to fairly tell you what is happening and why it's happening. We told you last night, Trump was just getting started. Mark Halperin said much the same thing last night. He's co-host of Two Way, longtime ABC News political director. His Substack is called The Wide World of News, which he covers better than just about anybody. Author of Game Change and Double Down. Both books are the reason I got into the political news business, so it's always an honor to talk to you. All right, you called RFK Jr. last night. What's coming down the pipe?
Well, we've got 5 nominations now that in any other administration would be massive stories about the perils of Pauline and the political risk that the president-elect was taking. I have great sources who say all 5 will be confirmed. And I have sources who say Donald Trump is about to destroy his presidency before it begins. It is impossible to cover Donald Trump like a normal president-elect, as you pointed out, and thank you for the nice introduction. This is not someone you can judge by the normal standards of will he survive or not. I think that Matt Gaetz may be the weak link of the 5, but all 5 of them have questions about whether they are the right people. And although George Will is right that Washington is kind of a fantasy land, the Senate, Republican controlled come the fall, come the January, is going to decide this. And that is an idiosyncratic body of 100 people, 53 Republicans, who are going to decide, will these people get the jobs Donald Trump wants them to have or not? And I can tell you, no one knows how this is going to end up.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Just to explain to people at home, and I think you and I probably understand this, I'm not sure everybody does, that Matt Gaetz, certainly, and Pete Hegseth to a lesser extent, are special not because they are going to burn this establishment down any more or any less, but because to those 100 people in the Senate, Matt Gaetz is sort of personally offensive by his character. To a certain extent, Pete Hegseth is as well. But if we zoom out, and I think one of the things you did before the election was head out through Pennsylvania, the other swing states. I did as well. There's a Rorschach test, right, to all of these. If you see RFK Jr. as the guy with the bear who killed the bear who's an anti-vaxxer, or you see him as a health crusader, Hegseth is either sort of this Fox News weekend lightweight, or he's a former soldier who served in combat, who's willing to talk about what's wrong with the Pentagon in ways that nobody else will. That's kind of the establishment versus the anti-establishment. It's not really left or right.
Leland, the way you just said it was so good. I hope somebody clips that off and puts it on social. It's exactly right. They contain multitudes, right? And that's true also of Tulsi Gabbard. It's true of Governor Noem, nominated at Homeland Security. And I think you're going to see a lot of talk about ideology. But to paraphrase the quote Michael Dukakis used when he became the Democrat nominee in 1988, it's about competence, too, right? It's not just about ideology. And part of the reservation that some Republicans have about Pete Hegseth and about Matt Gaetz is not about, or about Kristi Noem, or about Bobby Kennedy. It's not about, do they want too much fundamental change? Are they trying to shake things up? Although that's a concern, too, in some quarters. It's about, can this person run a building with 2 million employees? Can this person run a building with hundreds of thousands of employees?
Yeah, there is a difference, and I think you pointed this out, right, between slash and burn and crash and burn. And we may not really know, I think is what you're saying, which course Donald Trump is on right now until when? The middle of January, the end of January?
Well, look, nominations, as you know, can die at many steps along the way. They can be withdrawn before there's any courtesy calls or an FBI background check. They can be withdrawn on the eve of a hearing, at a hearing. They can be voted down in committee. They can be voted down on the floor. These people have a lot of toll booths to go through. Donald Trump will not care if there's an embarrassing piece about one of them in the Washington Post. He will not withdraw his support. If they want to fight all the way through, it's going to go on John Thune, the new Senate Majority Leader, in an interview tonight on what we used to call another network, seemed kind of wishy-washy, ambivalent, opaque about it. He seemed open to recess appointments, although I don't think that's going to happen. It's a procedural thing that I think will not actually be in play here. But he knows that a lot of his members have concerns, particularly about Matt Gaetz, but they do also about Bobby Kennedy. And so it's going to be fascinating to see how John Thune, what he says to his members. Does he say, everybody, this is our guy, our new president, we can't take him down and embarrass him? Or does he let people vote their conscience? I'll tell you this, if it was a private ballot with no repercussions, none of these people would be confirmed. None of them would be. If the senators voted on the merits of how they see it, I don't think any of them would be confirmed. But that's not what they face.
I think you've got a point there, especially when it comes to Hegseth and Gaetz. I don't know about the rest of them, but there's a couple things to break down here, and I know you got only a couple minutes, and we're grateful for it, so I want to go quickly. Is the media treating Donald Trump in the same way they treated, say, Joe Biden's nominees? And I ask that because you think about the aghast at Bobby Kennedy at HHS. And there's senators right now who are walking around with a picture of Rachel Levine. She used to be a he, who is the deputy health secretary or whatever, is now an admiral, not exactly, when you look at the picture, a paragon of health. And I'm looking at this and saying, I don't think Donald Trump is really playing the same game you and I are talking about of, does it matter whether this nominee gets confirmed or that nominee gets confirmed? He says, I have a mandate to burn the establishment to the ground, and I'm bringing my people with me to do it.
He's resilient, and if any of these people go down, he's not going to brood about it. He'll just pick somebody else.
Yeah.
I actually think, and this is a kind of a subjective fingertip feel thing, but I'm a pretty big consumer of media and political media. I actually think the major liberal anti-Trump news organizations like the New York Times, I actually think the coverage so far of the transition reflects they're being somewhat chastened. I don't think the coverage, even of Matt Gaetz, who they have no brief for, I don't think it's as negative as it would have been before. I think they're grappling with understanding Donald Trump won the popular vote. He won the election. They can't reflexively be negative about everything he does. Don't get me wrong. It's still very negative, but I think it is a little bit chastened. And I think that gives Trump an opportunity to try to make the case. As you brilliantly said, Bobby Kennedy can be seen as a kook who doesn't believe in science, or he can be seen as literally the greatest voice in modern American history for making our children healthier. And everybody's going to have to choose their own adventure, but the senators are going to make the ultimate choice about whether he gets the job.
Yeah, you look at Matt Gaetz as sort of this cartoon-like playboy, or a guy who is going to destroy the Department of Justice's adventures into political prosecutions. Pick which one, and that sort of is the way you look at this. All right. You rightly called yesterday Bobby Kennedy as the nominee. And we keep hearing from Trump world, at least I do from my sources, and I heard it last night after Matt Gaetz. This isn't over yet. I am taking that to mean that the days of Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz in the national security world are done. This is not sort of team normie. This is team burn it all down. And I said at the top, it's because Donald Trump doesn't care anymore. Is this a different Donald Trump than 2015, and how so?
Very different. First of all, he knows how things work, and he's only picking people who he has a relationship with. He doesn't want strangers like Rex Tillerson, and he wants people who will shake things up. Now, he has picked people, as you say, like Waltz and Rubio for state and NSC, who are more normal by political standards, more associated with the establishment. But I think a lot of this is going to be run out of the White House. And remember, we haven't seen the economic team yet. That's caught up in the factional disputes at Mar-a-Lago. That'll tell a big tale of what that team is like, because the economy is obviously a huge part of what this agenda will be. Whether he gets these folks confirmed or not, if he has to replace them, he's not going to back off. He's going to replace him with people with pretty similar views, I would say.
Yeah, he did back off once, right, with Ronnie Jackson, and now this time he seems to be going all in. Yeah. Hey, Mark, thank you. Two-way. The morning meeting starts tomorrow morning. It's worth everybody tuning in. It's the best political coverage right now going online. Thanks, Mark. It's good to see you. You're very kind. Good to see you, my friend. All right. Donald Trump may be the greatest fisherman in history. Another day, another meltdown, as Democrats and the media keep taking his bait again and again and again. Will the Democrats ever start talking the language the voters care about? President-elect Trump is scheduled to speak shortly. There is the attendees for the gala coming in, black tie and ball gowns. This is Thursday, 8 days since he was elected president, and he is ready to take a victory lap. He's delivering on his promises of picking his cabinet. Matt Gaetz is Attorney General, Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, Pete Hegseth, Defense Secretary, and now RFK Jr. in charge of every aspect of Americans' health care. Not only do the picks excite the MAGA base, which they do, they make the left melt down, literally. And this, we've said over and over, is Trump's superpower, goading his opponents into political traps. Here to explain, Democratic Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman.
It's just kind of like a God tier kind of trolling, just to trigger a meltdown. But really the Dems' opinions on Gaetz, that's not really what's interesting. What to me is interesting is the good ones are gonna come by my colleagues on the other side, the GOP, on how they can justify voting for that.
Something in that soundbite for everybody. With us now, Democratic Congressman Dean Phillips of Minnesota. He warned Biden would lose more than a year ago, challenged him in the primary, got ridiculed by the Democratic establishment, and is with us now. He also got the purple tie memo today.
I sure did.
Good to see you, sir.
Good to be back.
Thank you very much. It seems as though John Fetterman is the only person who understands what Donald Trump is doing and how to deal with him.
How to deal with him? Interesting. Well, I got to tell you, listening to some of my Republican colleagues right now, I don't think this is unique to the Democratic Party, because there used to be a time where we really all agreed on one thing, and that was competency. You know, Donald Trump won the election. He's going to nominate whomever he wants, but we are lamenting the nominees don't have the competency to run agencies of this magnitude. They don't have experience leading multi-thousand-person entities with huge multi-billion-dollar budgets, and it's really, really staggering to my Republican colleagues.
I get the criticism. Well, we've covered it with Republicans as well. Did with Mark Wayne Mullen last night. Mm-hmm. I think the senator got a little uncomfortable with a couple of our questions, but that's the way it goes. But there's something different going on, right? Donald Trump ran as a man of the people, of the working class, against the elites, to tear down the elites. And you look at the live pictures of Mar-a-Lago, everybody's walking in their ball gowns and in their tuxedos to one of the fanciest, most expensive places in America to join. Somehow he has stolen from Democrats the ability to talk about the working class and to paycheck voters. And when you're sitting around criticizing his appointees and talking about how dangerous he and they are, you're doing exactly what he wants you to do, aren't you?
Well, I don't think so, because I've been trying to tell my own colleagues on the Democratic side that we have to pay attention to not condemning him. We have to use invitation, not condemnation. I've been saying that for a long time, because you're right. He has found a way to connect with people that stagger us. But this is a man who was shunned in New York City, was blackballed by clubs and social circles in New York. He understands being an outsider more than people can recognize. And I think he connects with a lot of Americans who rightfully feel on the outside as well. So I give him credit for recognizing that. That's different than leading with good character and with principle and appointing people of competence. You know, it's one thing to reform an agency, and gosh knows, I'll be the first to tell you, we need to. I actually support an Office of Government Efficiency, for gosh sakes. Long overdue. Our debt is out of control. But then appoint people.
There he is, Vivek Ramaswamy.
Sure.
You could sign up. I mean, you're not doing anything after what, January 6th?
If I'm called on to help improve efficiencies and allocate dollars better to go further, of course, who wouldn't want to do that? But that's my point.
I think that's actually an interesting point, and I haven't heard you make that. You'd be willing to go into the Trump administration?
Well, if there's a job that can help the country and that my skill set would be useful for, Anybody should consider that. And if we come to a point where no Democrat will want to serve in a Republican administration, and conversely, we're limiting 50% of the universe of potential appointees. And that's what I'm trying to overcome, Leland. You know, I'm not a big fan of the president himself, but I understand the MAGA movement. I understand why people are angry. I understand why this federal government needs to be reformed. But then do it with people who have the competency and the integrity to do it. That's all I'm saying.
Why don't you think people in your party are willing to listen to you? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, one of the more progressive members, her pronouns, she, her, I guess, in the vernacular, disappeared from her Twitter profile. Oh. You seem sort of surprised by that.
I am.
Yeah. And it's not a big thing, but it's a little thing. Yet she's not willing to come out and say anywhere near the things that you or anyone else is willing to say. And when you have a movement that is as dedicated as Donald Trump's supporters are, it seems as though little incremental steps are not enough, in your opinion, for Democrats.
What I'm trying to tell my colleagues is, look, our product isn't bad. We had the state of Florida overwhelmingly supported women's reproductive rights, yet voted for the man who's opposed to them. Missouri passed a bill to increase the minimum wage, paid family leave, same in Alaska. Our product actually does pretty well. Our packaging is terrible. And my message is we don't have to change our principles. We don't have to compromise our values. We do have to learn who the right messenger is and how it should be packaged. That is marketing 101.
I understand the packaging, right? But isn't part of the packaging, though, not demonizing? And you've been a very good part of this. You've talked about this, right? It's, you know, if you don't want boys in girls' sports, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Walking in as well, if you don't want boys in girls' sports, then you're a transphobe. That sort of was the line. But as I look at this thing, and we talked to Mark Halpern about this earlier, and I'll ask you this. You can look at Robert F. Kennedy and say he is a quack who is a vaccine conspiracy theorist who kills bears. You can also say he is a crusader for children's health who wants processed foods and seed oils out of our kids' lunches, and there is a reason that girls are getting their periods earlier and young men are not turning out the way young men in the 1960s and 70s did, and their testosterone levels are really low. Why is it so hard for Democrats to have both conversations and not just demonize them?
Because we have this knee-jerk condemnation instead of employing invitation. And I'll tell you, this goes all the way back to our Democratic primary, when RFK was in the Democratic primary. If we had had a standard debate, the country would have been introduced to me, to Marianne Williamson, reintroduced to President Biden and to RFK. It would have been the first and only chance the entire country would have heard him express his perspectives himself. I would imagine 90% of people who've drawn conclusions about every one of us here on Capitol Hill have never seen us live and in person, and therein lies the biggest problem. We are condemning people without listening. We are not understanding where they're coming from, and that's what Democrats have got to stop doing. Yes, condemnation is the worst recipe for success in any industry, particularly politics, and I'm sick of it, and I don't blame people for being tired of.
I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds. You may get kicked out for saying you'd go work for Donald Trump or the Democratic Party.
Wow.
But if they don't kick you out, are you going to stay a Democrat?
Well, I'd like to help my party. I've been a Democrat my whole life. I believe in our core principles, but I respect conservative principles. I don't think that makes me some kind of a gadfly or unworthy of a Democratic Party member. But if my party is going to continue to act the way it is, and condemn and cancel and push aside and ask for purity, I think we are just as dangerous as any party in America, and that's what I'm trying to overcome.
Wow.
You know, we have got to provide competition to the two parties, and that's what George Washington warned us about in his farewell address in 1796, and here it is bearing fruit.
You, sir, have been willing, unlike anybody else, to challenge your party orthodoxy. You ran for president. You said there needed to be challenges. You warned about President Biden, and here we are. It's good to see you, as always. Thank you very much. All right. You would have known about all of the picks by Donald Trump as they happen with the NewsNation app. You can also watch us anywhere, anytime on the NewsNation app. Also get War Notes on the NewsNation app, warnotes.com to subscribe for free. There is MAGA, and then there is MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. What that really means and why there's Democrats now jumping on the MAHA, Robert F. Kennedy bandwagon. Back, live pictures of Mar-a-Lago where the guests are coming in for a gala there at President Trump's club in Palm Beach. Remarks from President Trump shortly. This is going to be his first remarks since his victory speech at 2:30 in the morning, Wednesday morning of election night. NewsNation, of course, was the first to call the election for Donald Trump back here in Washington. Joe Biden, though, is still the president and the commander-in-chief. He's ordered his staff to Trump-proof the Biden legacy. Here's his Secretary of State.
We've obligated just recently and pushed out the door another $8 billion in security assistance for Ukraine. That was in September. Another almost $500 million just a few weeks ago. And President Biden is committed to making sure that every dollar we have at our disposal will be pushed out the door between now and January 20th.
It's not exactly what a majority of Americans voted for last week. And in the Senate, Democrats are scrambling to fill any judicial vacancies they can. Even outgoing Senator Joe Manchin has joined the fight. At stake, 17 pending judicial nominees. Manchin says he will now vote for them, even if no Republicans do. Michigan Representative, new House Republican Conference Chair Lisa McClain of Michigan joins us. Nice to see you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Okay, put aside for a moment that this is sort of what every administration does, number one, and number two, they're going to do it. That's just the way the Constitution works. What is the plan legislatively, day one, for you guys? What is the priority for Donald Trump's agenda in the House?
Secure the border, get the economy back on track, unleash American energy, and make sure that we bring some peace and calm around the world, different than what's going on right now with the world being on fire.
So
those
if
are
we
the
think
three top priorities.
Okay, so I wrote them down, but if you think about dealing with border as number one in terms of what legislatively the House will have to do, you're going to have a slim majority, may not even have a full, it is going to be as slim as you can get, given how many Republicans Donald Trump has nominated to various jobs. What specifically on the border are Republicans in the House going to have to be willing to compromise on in order to get 60 votes in the Senate for any kind of meaningful border legislation?
Well, I don't know that we'll have to compromise. One, I think Donald Trump will have some ability to use some executive orders to close the border. Look, the American people spoke. They gave us a mandate. I know we've all heard that. But that is the biggest issue for a lot of people is we have got to secure this border. So I think, one, if he needs to use executive action to do that, he will definitely do that. One. Two, we already have a bill over sitting in the Senate, the border bill. I think the Democrats pretty much got their lunch handed. They got their lunch handed to them. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw some Democrats come over to our side in terms of border security.
You're not going to have Democratic senators vote for what was H.R. 1 that never had a chance without some kind of compromise. I think this is an important conversation because, yes, there was a mandate. And there was a mandate to get things done. And I think it's a reasonable question to say, would you be willing to compromise on a pathway to citizenship for dreamers? Is there something about having people who haven't committed a crime pay a penalty and wait in line? Some kind of protection for people who've been here illegally but are paying their taxes and haven't committed any other crime? That you all be willing to compromise on to get a bill done?
I think what you're doing is joining two issues. Immigration is different than border security. And before we talk about immigration, we have got to secure the border. So maybe there'll be some talks that once we secure the border, we can begin to talk about some immigration. But I don't see a lot of give and take right now on securing the border. That is a completely different issue than immigration, and I believe we need to keep the two separate.
Okay, so I just want to drill down on this. You think that you can get 60 votes in the Senate for a clean bill, including at least 7 Democrats, for absolute border security and to change the asylum laws and to memorialize all the executive orders without giving up anything?
That is going to be our goal. And if it doesn't work, I think the president had policies and orders in place under his last term that he did that worked, that if it doesn't work, he will institute again, because the American people are sick and tired of people coming to this country illegally. We don't care if they come here legally, but you can't come here illegally and then say, oh, hey, my bad, I'm sorry. It doesn't work like that.
Okay.
So my hope is that if we can't get it through legislatively, he'll have to use some executive orders, and I think he's prepared to do that.
Well, look, fair enough, right? Joe Biden came in on January 20th of 2021 and with a pen burned down the House of Trump and all of his executive orders on the border. Fair is fair. Republicans come back and do this. I'm fascinated by this picture. I asked Dean Phillips, I'm not sure you heard it, was the Democratic congressman from Minnesota about it. But Donald Trump and Republicans convinced paycheck-to-paycheck voters, and I use that term very advisedly, that they were their champions. They were the ones who were going to take it to the elites and who were going to make America better for them and their lives better. And now, 8 days after the election, we see a black tie gala at Mar-a-Lago, live pictures of everybody walking in with their jewels and their ball gowns. Do you worry that this does not necessarily send the right message before you all have done anything to help the paycheck-to-paycheck voters who said the elites are the ones who are holding me down and have been telling me for so long that I'm the problem?
Yeah, I'm not really worried about that. I'm sitting here in D.C. right now working on legislation, trying to get prepared for when there is the transfer of power, that we are prepared. We have legislation teed up, ready to go on day one. That's what we're working on. I'm not really paying attention to the celebration, but at the end of the day, I think celebrations are fine. Okay. I believe what you need to take a look at is under President Trump's leadership in his past 4 years, what was inflation? It was 1.4%. Clearly, people thought they were better off economically. They had a brighter future. They had better opportunity. That's what they're excited for. I don't think they're going to criticize him for having a celebration for winning.
Looks like a great party. You're working in D.C., and so are we. It's nice to see you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Good to see you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. 2 months after Hurricane Helene and the situation in western North Carolina, a place Donald Trump visited and promised that he was going to help, is still devastating. And now it's getting cold. It's not hurricane season anymore. The temperatures are in the 30s at night, and there is worse coming from those living in the mountains of North Carolina. Their homes were washed away. They're in tents and trailers. NewsNation senior national correspondent Brian Enton is there talking to families struggling and begging for help. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Leland. Yeah, it just seems like everybody has moved on, and this community here in western North Carolina is still devastated. We're in Swannanoa. This is just one of the many towns that still looks like this almost 2 months later. Still debris everywhere. Asheville, the big city, they still have no drinking water, but it's much, much worse out in these small towns. 100,000 people lost their homes, badly damaged or totally destroyed. And many of them we found coming out here, Leland. It was shocking. They're living in RVs that were donated, not FEMA trailers, but older RVs, or they're in tents. And you said it, it's getting very cold here, and they're sleeping in tents. Listen to what some of them told us, Leland. What about the people in the tents? What are they going to do?
It's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. We got to get those folks out of those tents and then those FEMA campers. How's it going to happen?
I had to rent this so that we would even be able to use the bathroom.
So you have to pay for that yourself?
Yes. Yeah, it's $130 a month to rent one.
There's times we don't get fresh meat because there's no way to keep it cold. Because you got to choose between heating the house with a generator, especially the ones who have kids, and keeping the food cold.
Temperatures are going to start getting in the 30s at night. We're afraid of more hypothermia, folks that are living in the mountains, and there's probably going to be more bodies laying around if we don't start getting these people in some level of temporary housing.
You know, Brian, you really understand the anger that people feel, that they're being left behind. We heard Secretary of State Blinken say we're pushing out every dollar we can to Ukraine. Nobody's talking about these folks. Is there an anger at the establishment? Is it anger at just Washington, Democrats? We know that sort of rural North Carolina and the mountains voted for Donald Trump. Do they say he's going to solve everything for them?
Well, listen, some of the people I interviewed were Democrats, and they were just as upset as the Republicans. They just need help. I don't even think they really care about politics right now. They don't understand why, there's all the bureaucracy and red tape with FEMA. And I want to show you this. Look at this video. I found this very interesting. There's this FEMA compound about 20 miles from where I am off of I-40. It's all gated in with armed guards, but it's organized, it's secure, all the government trailers, they sleep there. And it's such a different scene there where the staff
That's the FEMA workers.
Compared to what that's the FEMA workers, that's right. And it really strikes a chord with the people out here who are in the donated, 20-year-old RVs. They don't understand why they're not getting the help here. And just hopefully that'll change soon, because it's terrible to see.
Yeah, it makes you angry, furious. I can't imagine what those people are feeling. Brian, look, the rest of the world's moved on from Western North Carolina. Politicians have, Washington has, NewsNation is not. And you're doing some great and important work out there. This is real reporting, and telling these stories is what matters. Thank you.
Thanks, Leland.
All right, MAGA Meet Maha, Make America Healthy Again. That crew down there in Mar-a-Lago is celebrating Robert F. Kennedy Jr. How the topic of children's health may have won Donald Trump the election. Remarks. You can see the warm-up acts are already on stage. Donald Trump is thoroughly enjoying his newfound freedom. We've often said Trump understands his voters better than we do. In the past few months, Trump tapped into the Make America Healthy Again movement, MAGA rather than MAGA. Pharmaceutical stocks tanked in afternoon trading when Trump announced Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will head the Department of Health and Human Services. This should come as absolutely no surprise to anyone who saw Kennedy and Trump on the campaign trail. Trump gained popularity within the MAGA movement due to his unconventional views on America's health care. In making the pick, Trump said Kennedy will take on the industrial food complex and drug companies, so, quote, everybody will be protected from harmful chemicals, pollutants, pesticides, pharmaceutical products, and food additives that have contributed to the overwhelming health crisis in this country. And before you dismiss it, there is a health crisis in America. Here's Kennedy explaining it.
When my uncle was president, 6% of Americans had chronic disease, and we spent zero on chronic disease in this country. Today, probably around 60%. We don't know the exact number because NIH stopped publishing that number in 2006. But by 2006, it had raised to 54%.
Joining us now, Dr. Drew Pinsky, Chief Medical Board Member of the wellness company, TWC Health. Also interviewed Kennedy several times, done a lot of work with him. It's glad to have you here, sir. Thank you. So much to get to. But this concept that we have a health crisis in America and more medication from big pharma may not be the answer doesn't seem that outrageous to me.
No, it isn't. And what is outrageous is that before this week, you were unable to ask the question, why are these things happening? And still, you will get terrific derision if you ask, why did autism go from 1 in 5,000 to 30 in 100? Well, I mean, we have to ask these questions. Why did obesity go up? Why is diabetes going up? When I was in training, it was always being dismissed as, well, we're just living so long that people are ending up with chronic disease towards the end of life. That is no longer the case. And it's increasingly clear that at least part of the problem is the way we eat and the food we get, which, if you've heard, the very same lobbyists, scientists, and marketing professionals moved over from tobacco to food. So no surprise, yummy, addictive food, heavy lobbying, and we have unhealthy populations.
Yeah, I have to confess that I wrote this segment and researched it while eating a combination of Swedish Fish and Sour Patch Kids. So there is that. But there is a couple of things here. One, Republicans saying, you think Robert F. Kennedy's weird? Just look at Rachel Levine, Assistant Secretary of Health right now. We'll put the picture up. People can decide for themselves. It was a he before she became a she. We'll get the picture there in a second. But there's this orthodoxy, right? You can't question why girls are having their periods younger and younger, going through puberty younger and younger. Why young men, as they grow up into their teenage years, no longer look like the young men of the 1960s and 70s. Just look at like the composite pictures in high schools. You can't ask why everybody in Italy is so much healthier, even though they eat pasta and drink wine. Exactly. You see Robert Kennedy actually asking those questions and getting answers?
Oh, I do. This is his thing. When I first interviewed him, he goes, "Look, I know how to dig into corrupt organizations. I've done it my whole career." And he said, first thing I'm going to do, and I don't know if you saw the announcement, it's all over X right now, but he said to me, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the major journal editors and publishers, and I'm going to threaten them with a RICO action if they don't disclose everything about their relationship with Big Pharma and straighten that out. He just announced that not only is he already doing that, there's going to be a RICO action, he's including the medical societies in that action. So he will find out what influence there has been, how it has adulterated the publishing process, how it adulterates science itself. And there's just no doubt that that's happening. And we saw one of the great favors that COVID did to us, it had peeled that back where you could see it. Certain things weren't being published and only other things were being published. That is anathema to science.
So much here. We're learning now in the data that it was suburban moms who actually found what Robert F. Kennedy was saying so interesting. We said at the beginning of the program that, look, you can see a guy who is a vaccine conspiracy theorist, vaccine questioner, whatever you want to say, who kills bears, or you can see a guy who's a champion for health. I see you putting your hands up. I'm going to let you answer. How and what is incumbent upon Robert F. Kennedy to not allow that narrative to take hold?
Well, it is incumbent upon everybody to continue to pressure the press. I wonder if he doesn't sue the press for slander, because he's fully vaxxed, his family's fully vaxxed. He has no vaccine denialism. He wants vaccines subjected to the same scientific rigor as all the other medication that people like me are allowed by the FDA to bring to market. So we could use these things. As it is an entirely different operation with no liability to speak of. And there may be really significant problems with these vaccines. At least we should be able to ask the questions. I'm not a vax denier. Everybody's fully vaxxed in my practice. But when I give my patients informed consent, I have to include in that these things have not been tested the way I would be satisfied to really give them a clear understanding.
You said it the best. It's not the questions, as Tom Brokaw would say. It's the answers that get us in trouble. And when people are telling you can't ask the questions, that's problematic. Dr. Drew, it's good to see you, sir. Thank you very much. Big issue. We'll keep talking to you about it. Live pictures of Mar-a-Lago. Trump set to speak shortly. There is Doug Burgum, governor of North Dakota, who does not yet have an official position inside the next administration. White House columnist with our partners at The Hill, Niall Stanage, Washington correspondent for NewsNation, Kelly Meyer. Kelly, are you surprised by how quickly the attitudes in Washington have shifted?
Yes and no. I mean, it is happening pretty quickly, but also maybe because I was here for the first Trump administration, I know what to expect, and this is all moving very quickly. We were there at the White House when they both met together, and it was pleasantries and smiles down the colonnade at the Rose Garden. And it does seem like things are shifting into gear very quickly for President-elect Trump.
Niall, you cover the White House, well-sourced inside of it. Are Democrats yet coming to grips with this? Have they figured out how they're going to deal with the next Trump administration?
I don't think they've come to grips with it. I think this is a cataclysm from the Democratic point of view. This is a man who they believe to be a danger to American democracy, who has won pretty comfortably. And to Kelly's point, the thing that differentiates this, I think, from the first Trump administration is that administration was almost a coalition government of the MAGA party and the more establishment Republican Party. This is full steam ahead with the Trump train.
Yeah, no, it's clear that Donald Trump has now consolidated power in the Republican Party. And we said this at the top of the show, that he had to govern 2017 to 2021, 2016, 2020, whatever you want to call it, a little bit constrained by norms, right? So many of his picks were norms, and now that's not happening. Matt Gaetz, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Kristi Noem, Pete Hegseth, we go through the list. Kelly, I think that even Republicans up on Capitol Hill have been surprised by this.
Yeah, some of them were surprised by maybe the Gaetz pick. Like you said, RFK Jr., many knew that was coming because of the discussions. But I think it looks like, of course, the Trump loyalist that he's putting in there, he knows as well what he's doing this time around, to your point, the experience that he had from before and to now. And he's putting in people that he wants to shake up Washington like he promised.
I don't think shake up was the first term. This is sort of tear it apart. And that's what he says he's wanting to do. Now I'll give you the last 30 seconds. For Democrats who made so much of the campaign about opposing Donald Trump, they haven't come up with another message yet.
No, I don't think they have. And I think one of the problems is that it is Trump who has tapped into dissatisfaction, discontent, anger. Democrats have not done that, and that is what has enabled him to, in a way, steal their working class base.
So this is the first time we're hearing from Donald Trump in prime time since he won. He gave his election night speech 2:30 in the morning. The one thing that has struck us is Donald Trump is having a lot of fun. He's doing whatever he wants. The New York Times reports he sent Elon Musk to go meet with the Iranians. The Iranians, I should say. So this is a different Donald Trump. And we will see him now speaking to his party faithful, that are quite happy and excited by the first 8 days of the Trump transition that is moving, you might say, at Trump speed. Here's Chris.